The eyes in the dark. It started with the flickering lights. Small, harmless at first, just a quick blink of darkness, as though the house had momentarily forgotten how to be awake. But then it kept happening. More, frequently, more ominously. The power surged and dipped, and soon enough, Emily began to notice something far worse than just the failing electricity. It was a Tuesday night, just like any other, or so she thought. Emily sat on her worn leather couch, with the cold autumn wind screaming into the windows of her small, secluded house. The isolation of her home had never troubled her before. She went seeking it, in fact, and had found a kind of peace and quiet away from the bustle of the city. Tonight, though, the quiet was unnerving. The kind that made her heart pound harder within her chest with every creak and groan the house was making. She grabbed for the remote. The TV light illuminated the room in a dull glow as she rummaged around for something, not caring that her stomach churned with anxiety. The storm outside was worse. Rain pounded on the roof, and wind screamed its way through the trees as it made them sway like they were alive and dancing in the dark. The lights flickered again. This time they did not return. Emily sat there, her breath catching in her throat. A crack of lightning flashed, illuminating the room in starkly grotesque shadows. For a moment, she thought she saw something, a figure standing in the corner of the room. But by the time the darkness returned, she was alone. She slowly stood up, scanning the room. "Is someone there?" she called out in a breakingly uncertain voice. Of course, there was no answer. The only answer that came was the battering of the rain against the windows. Just as quickly as it had seemed they had left, the lights flickered back on. Emily exhaled the breath she hadn't even realized she was holding and seemed to sink into herself in relief. She rebuked herself for being such a chicken. It was just the storm, she thought. There wasn't anything in the house but her and her overactive imagination. But that relief didn't last long. Night after night, until the end of the week, things kept occurring. The lights kept flaring. Each time they flared, Emily felt as if someone was watching her. She would catch glimpses of something. No, someone out of the corner of her eye. A shadowy figure, not quite in her line of sight, lurking in the corners of her house. But when she turned to look, nothing was there. She couldn't sleep. She lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, listening for any noise at all, any sign that she wasn't alone. And then she heard it, the soft and almost inaudible sound of the footsteps on hardwood floor. Slow and deliberate, like someone or something was moving through the house, with no particular need to hurry. They stopped just outside her bedroom door. She held her breath. Darkness clamped in about her as she strained to catch some other sound. The handle on the door rattled ever so slightly, and her heart was racing. She was stuck, paralyzed with fear. After a moment that seemed like an eternity, the footsteps retreated, fading into the silence of the house. The next morning, Emily woke up sore in the body, with her body very stiff, with tension that had not slept well. That night she made up her mind and began conducting a proper investigation. She could no longer go on living like that, always being on the lookout, hoping in every corner of the shadow that there would be something or somebody she wasn't expecting. She searched all the rooms in her house, each closet, each corner of the house with her flashlight, finding nothing that might betray the presence of any intruder. Everything was exactly the way it should have been, but the feeling lingered in the air, a feeling of being watched. It was not until she checked the basement that she found something out of place. The door to the basement had always been locked. In fact, she never had a reason to go down there. But now, the lock was broken, hanging loosely from the doorframe. She stared at it, her mind racing. Had someone broken in? Was someone living down there without her knowledge? Courage comes from within. It had taken her a couple of minutes to get downstairs those creaking, wooden stairs. The basement was cold, damp air with a smell of mildew. It was dark, but she could make out silhouettes against the walls, old furniture and forgotten boxes. Her heart thudded in her chest, where she moved even deeper into the room, eyes scanning for any sign of life. And that's when she saw them. Two glowing orbs, faint but unmistakable, staring at her from the far corner of the basement. Eyes. She froze, blood turning to ice in her veins. The eyes blinked once, twice, and then started moving toward her. Slowly, deliberately. Emily's breath came in short, panicked gasps as she stumbled, backward, her hand wildly feeling her way for the light switch. She found it and flicked it on, bright, fluorescent light illuminating the basement. The eyes vanished. Emily stood there, shaking, her back against the wall. She didn't move for hours, it must have been, as her mind bombarded her with question after question. What in the world had she just seen? Had it really happened? Or was she losing her grip on reality once and for all, after all of those long, sleepless nights? But then she saw it. Only that could make the blood run cold in those eyes. In the middle of that floor, where her eyes had just been, was a little, wet footprint. And it wasn't hers. For the next few days, Emily convinced herself that it was all a hallucination, trick of light and sleep-deprived mind. The footsteps in the night kept coming. The feeling of being watched never went away. Every time the lights flickered, she knew those eyes were waiting for her in the darkness. One night, she could not carry on like this, so she packed herself a shoulder bag. She was going to make her escape from the house and turn back to face nothing again. But just as she stood at the front door with one hand on the doorknob, the lights went out once more. Pitch darkness. Blending into the darkness with her heart pounding, she fumbled for her phone on the bedside table, where its faint screen lit up her way. And then she saw them, those exact same glowing eyes, staring back at her, this time from the hallway. But closer, much closer. Emily screamed, dropping her phone as the eyes advanced. She stumbled backward with her hands clawing at anything to fend off whatever evil was pursuing her. However, the darkness was too intense and overpowering. The eyes didn't even blink. They kept on coming, cold and relentless. She ran, pounding along the floor with her feet as she ran for the back door. But no matter how fast she went, the eyes were always there, following her, hunting her. And she stumbled. Her body fell hard on the earth, the wind knocked from her lungs. She scrambled to her feet, but too late. The eyes were only inches from her face now. The cold breath of whatever creature they belonged to touched her skin. The last thing Emily saw before darkness finally consumed her completely was the glow of those terrible eyes